So not only the rich and wealthy don't really care about the inflation so much, but sometimes they even welcome it, while in the same time the middle and poor class have the biggest impact from the inflation. So why is that? Now when you think about it, at the first glance it sounds like the wealthy should be impacted too, because after all, don't they have the bills to pay too? Don't they have to shop for groceries, pay the car insurance and etc.? And of course they do, but here is the major difference. You see, when it comes to living expenses, of course everybody has to pay them. However, when you think about it, let's take the apartment rent or mortgage for example, and while for middle class, this expense is usually between 20 to 30% annually. I'm talking when you compare it to your annual salary, of course. But for wealthy, rich, or especially the ultra rich, this expense would be literally 0.0001% of the entire annual revenue, and that's the big difference. Also, especially right now, a lot of people decide to rent the apartment instead of buying the house, for example, especially if they're in middle class. And as you probably know, after the rental lease is finished, the rent could be increased by the landlord. So when you're renting a living place, or especially when you're switching the place, the rent seems to always go up. And while some costs for the homeowners can go up too, for example, the property taxes and insurance for the house, but this will be definitely way lower increase. Obviously, this was just one example, but same goes for grocery prices, fuel costs, utility bills payments, infotainment, and etc. So if for any of these things the costs are increasing, this inflation impact would be pretty severe for the poor and middle class, but it won't matter for the rich and wealthy so much, simply because these expenses are very low percentage when you compare it to their overall spending. Now this actually brings me to even more important part of this video, and that is why rich and wealthy actually welcome the inflation. You see, you have to look at what middle class and poor is spending the money for. This is the rich and wealthy. So mostly we in the middle class spend most of our money for consumer goods, and I'm not only talking about buying fancy stuff or anything like that. I'm just saying that somehow we tend to spend most of our money, and even it is for the necessary goods and services. The middle class, for example, is mostly consumers, while the rich and wealthy spend only a small amount of money for consumer goods, but actually they spend majority of their money to buy assets, and that's the biggest difference. So now when the inflation hits, they actually make more profits simply because they own the assets. So you go to the grocery store and your milk went from $3.50 to $4 a gallon. They're not gonna lose the money, because even if the distributor is gonna charge them more for the milk, they're gonna put this price difference for the customers. Remember, they own the assets. In this case, they own the store. Same thing goes for the rent. Your rent is increasing, but they own the entire apartment complex. So because they own this asset, they can charge more too. And same thing with other purchases too. They own the gas station, so you pay more money for gas, but their profit is not only good today, but it's gonna go up tomorrow, next month, and next year too, because they literally own everything. Look, the thing is, I know most of us are struggling financially right now, so we can't really picture ourselves investing ton of money into something, but you know what? There is a light in the end of the tunnel, because all it actually takes is this little mind shift. So start thinking today how to actually get the assets. And no, believe me, I'm not talking about borrow $500,000 from the bank to buy a rental property today, because that would be very difficult and it could potentially end in a disaster. But I'm talking about the small steps. So instead of paying high interest on the credit cards, for example, focus on paying off all the debt. So you're gonna have few $100s a month, and that's the money you can save or invest later. Or instead of buying new iPhone every year, for example, invest this $1,000 to the Apple stock, for example. Now I'm not specifically telling you to invest to the Apple stocks, but I'm just trying to make a simple point. So instead of being a good consumer, learn how to gain the assets. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap up this video, but make sure to check this video next. There is important info in it too, and thank you for watching.